Hi everyone, this is Jennifer Miller for Project and Portfolio 1, and you're watching the How to Draw Badly tutorial and Introduction to Storyboarding Basics. Storyboards are graphic representations of what you plan to shoot during an upcoming production. They're created within the pre-production phase of filmmaking. These boards that you see here were original drawings created by DCBS graduate Tim Cruz, and he did a really excellent job. But I don't want anyone to get intimidated by this assignment or your first attempt at storyboarding, so I'm going to show you another excellent example, and that would be mine. This tutorial is called How to Draw Badly because the lesson is you don't have to be an amazing illustrator to be a good storyboard artist. Here are a few other examples of the different ways that students can choose to storyboard this week. This assignment created by Nathan was done using pencil line drawings, and then his images were scanned into the computer. In this example, Jeremiah used Photoshop to sketch his storyboards in a digital format. And here, Jeremy Wood used his camera to shoot still photos that were then added into the boards to represent shots. So here's what we're looking for as elements within your storyboards, which we'll be discussing today. We're going to be looking for background information, framing or shot type information, and we have an additional resource to help you learn more about the different shot types if you're not familiar with those yet, screen direction, and movement, which would be camera or actor movement within your frame. Today's tutorial is created using Adobe Photoshop CS6 on Creative Cloud, and for some parts of it I use a Wacom tablet, but that's absolutely not required, and everything I'm doing in this tutorial can be done on your trackpad, or if you have a mouse, that's even better. So to get started, we are going to open up Adobe Photoshop. Like I said, for this tutorial example, we're going to be sketching digitally, but if you would prefer to sketch by hand or shoot still photos, then this upcoming information is still going to be useful because it's going to tell you the different parts of the storyboard frame that we'll be looking for in terms of grading. So please stick with us even if you're not ready to tackle Photoshop just yet. Now I'm going to assume that you guys watching today have limited or perhaps no prior knowledge with Photoshop, so I'm going to take it down to just the basics. We're not going to go through and learn all of the tools today. If you're interested in learning more about Photoshop, definitely check out the lynda.com tutorials that you have access to through the Connect portal. But today we're only going to use the tools that you need to create your storyboard sketches. So the first thing that I'm going to do is go up to File and choose New. Under Preset, I'm going to set it to Photo, and for size, we're going to work in a landscape 4:6. Resolution, I'm actually going to reduce to 72 dpi, which is pixels per inch. That'll create a smaller image size. Color mode can stay as RGB because we're planning to share it on the internet, and the background contents can be white. They might be set to transparent by default, so make sure you turn that to white, and then we're going to go ahead and click OK. Now if I want to zoom in here, your zoom tool is in the bottom left hand corner where you can use Command and the plus sign to zoom in. So we have a better look at this frame. Now this is going to be one frame or one shot of our storyboards, okay? So I'm going to go to File, Save As, and then I am, for the purposes of this, going to create a new folder on my desktop and call it Storyboards. You guys can call it whatever you'd like. And then I'm going to save this as a Photoshop file. PSD, and save it to my storyboards folder. And now we can get ready to begin. First, take a look at the right hand side of your screen. In the bottom right hand corner, you'll see a few different tabs down here. We're going to take a look at the Layers tab. In Photoshop, everything works as different layers. So you can move those layers around like sheets of paper, and you can add things on top of or underneath other elements. So this is our background layer, and it's white. We're going to keep that layer white, and we are going to add a new layer by going to this small icon, the second one in from the right, and that's going to create a new layer, which is what we'll be working on today. Now if we go over to our toolbar all the way on the left, you may see many options. It may be a little bit overwhelming. What I want you to do is find the paintbrush, which is about 7 or 8 icons down from the top, and I want you to click on that paintbrush. That's our brush tool, and the shortcut is B. And once we have that selected, we can go up to the top here, and there'll be a number. What you can do is adjust the size, and you can kind of test it out here by looking at our canvas. And you can pick a size that you're comfortable with. Now, when you're sketching out your storyboards, you don't want it to be too thick, but you do want the lines to be thick enough that they're definitely easily seen within your project file. And we're going to keep the opacity at 100%. And basically now we're ready to sketch. This is all you really need for your first sketch is we created a new layer and we found our paintbrush tool. The default should be set to black for your color, but you can double click down here if you want to try a different color. If you're starting out with storyboards for the first time, I would recommend sticking with black and white. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start off with that background information. So for this example, I'm going to say that I am doing a scene that takes place at a state park. So I'm going to go ahead and start sketching here, and you'll see that I'm going to create some happy little trees back here. Now, as I'm sketching, remember what I said about drawing badly. You don't have to be a super talented illustrator or spend a ton of time on your storyboards for them to be effective. The way that we evaluate storyboards in this class is whether you've considered all the information that your cast and crew is going to need to set up this shot. Ooh, that's a little wavy, but that's okay. So I am creating this path in this forest, and if you need to clean some things up or make a change, you can use the eraser tool, which is about halfway down. It's this guy right here. And again, you can adjust how big or small the eraser is in your size menu. I'm going to go back to my paintbrush and make this be a welcome sign. Now you'll notice that it looks a little bit blurry here. That's because I'm zoomed in all the way to 400. If I zoom back out to my actual size of the image, you'll see that it doesn't look anywhere near that blurry. Alright, so now we have this welcome. Let's say that this is all that our opening is going to be. So that's totally fine, and I'm ready to save this out. I don't have any characters in here yet. So what we're going to do is you're going to go to File. Now we're going to go to Save As. Okay. Now in that folder, we're going to name it, and it's our first shot So I am just going to name this shot 1. You can name it whatever you feel comfortable with. Under format, I'm going to go down to JPEG. And I'm going to make sure it goes to that storyboard folder, and that's saved as shot 1. And anywhere from 8 to 10, I think, is going to be fine for this, and you can go ahead and hit OK. So now we can check it. Here's shot 1. If we open it up, we'll see the actual size of our frame. And so here's our first shot that we sketched. Moving on. So now that we've got our background down pat, we can start talking about characters. Now, one thing that I want to show you before you add a character is how to adjust the opacity of the background of one of your sketches. So over here in our layer 1, there's a little eyeball symbol. If I click the eyeball on and off, you can see that our drawing turns on and off. Now we sketched that all on the same layer, so when I click it off, it all goes away. Up above here is opacity, and that's how see-through is the image, to put it in layman's terms. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the opacity and I'm going to adjust it down, and as I do that, you'll see the image begins fading away or getting lighter and lighter to all the way to white. So I'm going to adjust that down and just kind of take a visual cue, but I'm going to make it just so it's a little bit lighter. So I think actually around a little over 50%, we'll say. Okay, so now we have this set. I stopped at around 60%. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer. And I'm going to click on the new layer button, which is the second icon in from the right, and it's automatically going to have that new layer selected. Now if I want to, I can double click slowly and I could change the name of this layer to background just to keep myself organized. Now you always want to make sure that you've selected the layer that you're ready to sketch on. So I'm going to go ahead and select my new layer, layer 2, and go back to my paintbrush, and now I'm ready to add my character in. Now this shot is going to be a wider shot, and the next thing that we want to think about after we have our background information is our shot type. And as I mentioned earlier, you guys do have another reading resource that you can use to learn more about shot types. If you're not familiar with different shot types or framing just yet, that's okay. Just focus on the 3 basic shot types, okay? And the 3 basic shot types would be a wide shot, which is going to show the character's full body. A medium shot, which would show the character from the waist up. Or a close-up, which would be only showing the character's face or main features. So now that I'm back in my park drawing, I've decided that this is going to be a medium shot. So I'm going to show the character from the waist up. So the first thing that I'm going to do is make sure I'm on my new layer, and then I'm going to begin drawing my character in. Now, you can see that it starts to get a little bit confusing when we can see the background through this layer here. So in this case, what I would do to correct it is go into my background layer, and I can use the eraser tool. There's a few different ways. I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible for you guys. So you can use the eraser tool and then you can clean this up a little bit for this shot. But the alternative to that would be to duplicate your background layer first. If I right-click on it and choose duplicate, then what you can do is you can hide the original layer, and on the new layer you can delete out what you need. And that way, if you want to use the background again on another similar shot, then you'll still have a copy of that original background layer saved. So now I have my medium shot. It's my waist up shot of my character. So in my current frame, I have background information. He's standing at the entrance to the park or the woods, and my character is shown from the waist up, which tells me that I'm setting this up as a medium shot. The next thing that we're adding in is screen direction, and we need to know which direction you are planning on having your talent face. So in other words, is the talent looking directly at you? Are they looking to the right, to the left, up, down, what have you? Let's go back to our sketch pad over here. Let's talk about two different ways that you can show screen direction on your talent's face. Here's some stickman heads. The first option is to use cross-hatching. And cross-hatching is when we draw a line, or a T, two lines actually, straight through our stickman's head. Now, when you do this, you don't have to add any other information, which means you're not required to draw in a face. But, just so you're aware, it's implied that the eyes would be on either side of these quadrants, and the mouth would be here, and the nose would be at the intersection. Now in this example, my character would be looking directly at the camera. But what if they want to look right or left? Then we're going to change the T and we can make them look in different directions. What if we want to have them look down? Or up? So those are some ways that you can show cross-hatching. But if you don't want to do cross-hatching, there is another option, and that's to draw a nose symbol. And once again, you don't have to add in the eyes and the mouth unless you want to. But adding a nose to your circle is going to tell us which direction your talent is facing. Are they facing to the left, right at the camera? Are they facing to the right? And just to clarify, it is absolutely not required that you do stickmen. If you are talented like Tim or like some of the other student artists that I showed you in the examples, you are more than welcome to show off your illustration talents, and we would love to see them. But once again, this tutorial is called How to Draw Badly because we are just focusing on the basics that are going to give you the most important and useful information in your projects. Now we're back on our drawing, and the first thing I'm going to do is make sure I'm on the right layer. I want to be drawing on our new layer, layer 2. We have our background information in here. We have our framing size, which is a medium shot. Now I'm going to add in my cross-hatching, which will show screen direction. And there's one more thing that was listed in our example, and that was character or camera movement. Now, character and camera movement is not something that's going to be found on every single shot, but it's something that I'd like you guys to consider if it would be useful to your project plans. For the sake of sketching, I'm going to change to a red color so that it's easily seen. And the first thing we're going to look at is how to set up character movement in your scene. And there are a few different ways that this could be set up, and different illustrators or storyboard artists use different techniques and symbols in the industry. But for the purposes of this class, we're going to be using arrows. We will use a closed arrow to represent character movement. So that means if we want our character to move from the left side of the screen to the right side, we would use an arrow that looks like this, that has a closed end. If we want our character to move from the left to the right, we'll use a closed end arrow facing the other way, of course. But what about camera movement? Our cameras can move left to right. They can move in a pan or up and down in a tilt, or they can zoom in and out many different ways. So to represent our camera movement, we're going to use arrows that are open-ended. And that's going to tell us the difference in terms of our symbols for Portfolio 1. So again, the top arrows would be the talent or the actors moving from left to right and right to left. And on the bottom, we have the camera, which is panning from left to right or right to left. What if you're zooming in? Then we're going to add a zoom into the scene. So let's go and apply that to our sketch. So let's say that our talent is going to be walking left across this path that we've set up here. So I'm going to make sure that I'm on our top layer. You could even make a new layer if you wanted to, but we'll just sketch in the same one. And then I'm going to be adding my arrow in here. Okay. Now there's no right or wrong as far as the size or specifically where it's going to be at, but you want to make it clear that this is an arrow representing the movement of the talent and that he's moving from the right to the left. Now in this case, I would not also put camera movement in for the sake of this image, but if you wanted to, here's how it would look. If we wanted to add our camera movement, I'm going to use that open-ended arrow, and that is an arrow to show that I'm going to be zooming in or pushing into this shot. If you ever make a mistake while you're working, you can go to the Edit tool and choose Step Backwards to undo what you just did. Now I'm going to save this image out, so I'll choose File, Save As. This is shot 2. Remember, we want to change the format to a JPEG and hit Save. And now we have our second shot done. We're going to do one more with you before I let you go. Let's say for the next shot, we're not going to be using the same background. If I wanted to, remember we had the background backed up so we can add a new layer and do another sketch on top of the same background. But let's say that we're moving to a different location. So I am going to take off my sketches that I've created so far, and I'm going to add a new layer. And you can change the names if you want. Let's say we're working on shot 3 now. So the first thing that I'm going to do for shot 3 is sketch in my background. So in this shot, it's going to take place at the lodge. All right, now I'd like to make my opacity come down a little bit, add a new layer, and now I'm ready to sketch. This is going to be a two-shot. I'm going to have two different characters. Because they're going to be doing an interview. We'll say this one's a girl. Here's his microphone. She's going to be the park ranger, and this is her office. I'm just going to use my eraser tool to clean up her face a little bit. Alright, so once again we have background information, we have our shot type, which we did another medium shot, and then we have our screen direction. We can see from our crosshatch symbols that our characters are facing each other. And I'm going to just add a small arrow in here to show that our talent is walking in towards the subject that he's about to interview. When I'm happy with it, I'll choose File, Save As, name it Shot 3, change the format to a JPEG, and choose Save and OK. Now that I have this ready, it's time for part 2, which is beginning to add our images into our storyboard template. Now remember, I'm doing these sketches just as examples for a made-up scene. Here's the template that we're going to be using to create the first 6 frames or shots of our storyboards. To begin, type your name at the top of the page. And you'll see that our windows are drag and drop. Now, if you do need a 16:9 widescreen, we do have that template option available as well for those of you who are shooting still photos. So my next step is to open up my saved files that I had prepared, and I'll start with shot 1, drag it over top of the box for shot 1 above, and then I'll continue to do that with shots 2 and 3. Now for this assignment, students are required to submit 6 frames of content, so you'll be creating 6 images or 6 shots, but since we're just doing an example, I only went through 3. You can double click on the box to adjust the size if you want to reformat it, or if you want to size it down to our original size, it's slightly smaller. Next, you'll type in your shot descriptions, and that begins with the shot type abbreviation. You can find a list of all the abbreviated shot types as a separate activity. This is going to be a wide shot, which is abbreviated WS, and then you just want to type in a description. So we'll say this is the welcome sign at the entrance to Yellowstone Park. Our next shot was a medium shot, and we'll call this guy Bob, and we'll say that Bob is walking down the path in front of the welcome sign, sharing his introduction. Keep in mind, your shot descriptions should be 1 to 2 sentences, and they should explain the action that's going to be taking place. You can also move these descriptions around if you need a little bit more space. And then shot 3 is also a medium shot. And we'll say that Bob interviews Park Ranger Julie about the current state of wild blue jays. All right. So once I finished all 6 of my shots and shot descriptions, including those shot type abbreviations, and I named my project, I'm going to go to File, Export to PDF. I'll change the image quality to best and choose Next. Then I'll navigate to my saved folder, and I'm going to name it last name underscore first name underscore storyboards.pdf, and I'll go ahead and choose export. I hope you enjoyed working on your storyboard sketches with me today, and if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to let me know. I'll see you online.